Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED, and this is Q5 Ham Radio. Today I'm joined by Gregg Marco W6IZT. He's an accomplished DXpeditioner and the driving force behind the Pacific Island DX Group's upcoming operation from Saba Island, where the team will be on the air as PJ6Y. Building on the success of innovative expeditions like VP6A and 3D2Y, Gregg, in partnership with Youth on the Air, are pushing boundaries. PJ6Y isn't just another DXpedition. It's a youth-led, dual-site effort that combines ground-up station building, remote technology, and a clear focus on mentoring the next generation of DXers. We'll explore what makes this project different, how the next-gen RIB continues to evolve, and what it means for young hams to call CQ from a remote island or experience their first pile-up from thousands of miles away. This episode of Q5 Ham Radio is brought to you by DX Engineering, proud supporters of DXpeditions and DXing around the world. Whether you're operating from your home or halfway across the globe, DX Engineering has the gear and expertise to help you get heard. Gregg, thanks for joining me.
You're welcome, Kevin. It's good to be here.
So I always need to know where people are. Where are you right now? I can tell you're in your shack, but what part of the world are you in?
I call Morganton, Georgia home. It's about a 2-hour drive north of downtown Atlanta. In the country, up on top of a ridge. It's a great place to be a ham radio operator.
So I told myself before we got started that I wasn't going to do my usual and ask you where you got started in ham radio, but I need to do that. How did you get started in ham radio, Gregg?
It was in 1967 or 68. A close friend of mine got his license, and I was intrigued, and I got my license shortly after he did. Been active ever since. I was 13 or 14 years old and got interested in ham radio, and then my interest shifted to girls and kind of dropped ham radio and got back into it in my mid-20s and got into DXing in the mid-80s and DXpeditioning in the early 2000s.
So let's talk about the 2000s getting involved with DXpeditions. That isn't everybody's niche. And I have found, the longer I'm back in the hobby, that there are people that really enjoy it and they're on multiple DXpeditions, and that seems to be you. How did you get your start in doing DXpeditions, and where was that too?
I was a member of the Southeast DX Club, and Bob Alphin, K4UEE, organized a contesting trip for CQ Worldwide sideband to TI-5KD, Keko Station in San Jose, Costa Rica. The day before the contest, or the morning of the contest, we woke up and both of our radios were dead. And what had happened was we'd had a windstorm during the night, static electricity built up on the antennas, took out the pin diode switches in both our K3s. I got on the phone with Elecraft and repaired them in time for the contest. You know, pin diodes are impossible to come by in Costa Rica, so we had to improvise a bit. And Bob said, "It looks like you can fix anything." And I said, "Bob, my kids say that about me." And that led to getting an invite to going to Desecheo. And I think there's been a dozen or so major DXpeditions since then, and about 30 or 40 vacation style trips to the Caribbean, Hawaii, that sort of thing. So it's really something I enjoy. And I turned 70 last year, and I'm getting to a point in life where I can't do these forever. And I'm looking forward to sharing some knowledge and expertise and skills with the next generation.
So before we get into PJ6Y, I'm curious about the VP6A Ducey DXpedition. Tell me about that.
So George had taken Magnet, George A7JV had taken Magnet to the Pacific, and he knew that I'd been to Pitcairn, and Ducey is under the same government that Pitcairn is, and he just said, "What about Ducey?" So I made a couple phone calls and determined it was feasible. This was probably in the May timeframe of 2023, and got the license, the landing permit, all the paperwork in order, and we arrived at Ducey in late June of that year.
And then the progression to PJ6Y. How did that? I mean, obviously you're in the DXpedition world, you're in the next gen RIB world. What was the genesis of saying, hey, I want to go to Saba Island and make this a youth-led DXpedition?
So we went to Rotuma last year, a team of 6, and this team was constrained by the available accommodations that could support us. And got back from Rotuma, recharge my batteries a little bit. And early this year, I started looking at a place to go to that could support a larger team. And initially, I was looking at Grenada, and that lasted all of about 2 days. And it occurred to me we had a bunch of material in storage on Saba. And I reached out to a friend, Jeff, NM1Y, who has a home there. And I bounced the idea off of Jeff and his wife, Shelley. They were very enthused about it, and we were off and running. We have a team of 15 operators, including Jeff. 9 of those operators are first-time DXpeditioners, and 4 of those operators came from the off-island team from Rotuma. So we have a bit of a recruiting process where if you're an off-island team member, you're going to be at the front of the line to get invited to the next trip down the road. And so I'm real excited about that. We have 3 ops from North America and 6 ops from Europe.
So tell me more about the location. It sounds like you say there's equipment on the island, you have somebody there. Are you going to be operating from his house, his QTH?
We're going to be operating from 2 locations. One is his QTH, which is on the north side of Saba, about 1,200 feet above sea level. And I was part of a DXpedition that went there in 2010 when Saba became a new entity. And we had operated from another location, and we've rented that spot for 2 weeks as well. So both are on the north side of the island. One's about 300 feet above sea level, and Jeff's house is about 1,200 feet. Great locations.
So obviously getting youth involved in ham radio is something we all talk about, but you're actually doing something about it. Tell me more. What caused you to say, I'm going to step up and not just keep talking about it incessantly, I'm going to actually do something about it?
Well, I have to blame my wife for that one. The first next gen we built went to Juan Fernandez in 2024, and it worked really well. We made about 16,000 Qs. The off-island team was really excited about it. I didn't expect the level of passion that they shared. And in talking with my wife, Wendy, about this, I said, what do we do with this? She should get kids involved. And so that was the genesis for planning the trip to Rotuma. Being on the island with these young hams is really an amazing experience. Not once did they tell me that something had to be fixed. They told me that something needed to be fixed, and they fixed it. And maybe we had to go back and revisit it, maybe not. But they were all very motivated, very conscientious. It was just a real thrill. And I realized that this is something that I needed to continue on with. So Saba is the next step in the project. And we've identified May or June of next year to do another trip somewhere. We haven't figured out the location. I'm heads down planning for Saba. Once Saba's finished, we'll figure out where we're going to go. But it's very possible that'll be a trip that's led by some of the DXpeditioners that went to Saba, maybe a couple of the guys that went to Rotuma. I'm kind of envisioning that no old man supervision on the next one. So, taking the process to its final step is I'll help them with planning, I'll help them with fundraising and PR and social media, but I'm kind of thinking they're going to go on this trip on their own.
So if you have young ham radio operators who are actually fixing gear themselves and problem solving, I've got to believe that there is some sort of rather stringent process you go through before you sign somebody up. What's it take to get on your list?
Kevin, that's a question I can answer 2 ways. This question was posed to me at the Yoda camp in Denver a couple of weeks ago. And my response was, who am I to judge? When I was 18 years old, I probably wouldn't have been selected to go on one of these trips, just where I was at when I was 18. And if you show the desire, if you have the ambition, odds are you can get on the team. In contrast, we can go to the other end of the spectrum and say, well, you need to do an essay on why you want to be on the team, but that's not where I'm really at right now. We've got folks that have turned out to be great leaders from Rotuma, and in working with the team that's going to Saba, I can see who the leaders on this team are going to be already. It may sound like it's not stringent enough, it's kind of free form, but it's working out the way it is. And again, I don't want to have to be the one that says, you go and you don't. We have a list. When the list is full, then we cut off accepting applications. We have one alternate for Saba. If somebody drops off the team, then that alternate will step up. One alternate young DXpeditioner, one alternate for an experienced DXpeditioner. Our medical person who's going to Saba may not be able to go, so I've lined up another doctor to be on the team. I don't like to go places without having some sort of medical expertise on the team.
Well, Gregg, I'm certainly impressed with your approach. I mean, the short time I've been back in ham radio, I've noticed there are a couple of distinct groups, and one is you need to know all the answers before you get next to that mic. And then there, thankfully, are a number of people that say, grab the mic, grab the key, and let's get started. And let's see if we can get through this and see what you learn. And I've also watched people, for example, do Parks on the Air and become great problem solvers because all of a sudden they're 2 hours away from home. They have left something back at home, but they don't want to waste the trip, so they do problem solve. I want to hear more about Rotuma and you talking about how you watched that dynamic and who stepped up. Can you tell me more about that, how that all unfolded? You don't have to mention names, but I'm really curious when you land at a location and the luggage gets unpacked, what do you normally see?
We start unpacking. The first thing we do is we set up the ribs. The ribs are designed for rapid deployment. And when we got to Rotuma, we had 2 of the 3 ribs on the air within probably 60 to 90 minutes, and the off-island team was making cues. The third one we got on the air the next day. And the reason we do that is we're putting cues in the log, and the on-island team is busy building infrastructure. So the first thing, we got the ribs on the air, got them hooked up to Starlink. The off-island team was off and running, and then we focused on getting the antennas set up. And within I think the first day, we had 2 ribs, 2 local stations, and antennas up for 20 through 10. So it went together pretty quickly. An example of problem solving and taking initiative to do things is one of our antennas we put up in the surf. Not a great idea, and but it worked really well until a storm came and took it down, and the tuner ended up in the ocean. So one of the operators grabbed the tuner, we opened it up, we rinsed it out with fresh water, dried it out for a day, and rather than just put it up, this one operator decided he was going to test it. Well, remote and tuners are 15, 20, 30 relays, and he couldn't determine he could hear a relay clicking, but he couldn't determine if it was the right one. So he grabbed our medical guy and grabbed his stethoscope and took the stethoscope and put it on each of the relays. And there's actually a picture of this in the presentations that we do. And it's just that sort of initiative. I can't think of a time when they told me something was broken and it needed to be fixed, but they always told me it was fixed and it was working or needed more attention. So that's just a good example. Weather was a problem on Rotuma. We had a situation, it was during CQ Worldwide CW, and Jamie M0SDV was in the tent, or in our shelter, which was more of a lean-to. It was kind of just thrown together. It was right on the beach. And I'm up at the house, and I hear the wind come up, and I hear the rain come up, and I go, this is not normal. And just then my phone rang, and Jamie's screaming help in the phone. The roof had blown off of the shelter. And so I grabbed the team, we went down, and we got the roof back on and secured it we took a bunch of pieces of coconut tree trunk and just laid them on the roof as a dead weight, and packed up all our gear. And tomorrow was going to be another day. We set things up again and got back in the contest.
So you're going to be operating obviously as a kind of a traditional DXpedition, if there's such a thing as traditional, but you're also going to be doing a contest. So I'm kind of curious how you're splitting the kind of the action plan for running the DXpedition part of it versus the contest. How are you approaching the contest?
The operational plan for Saba is that the young hams own it. We put together an operating questionnaire, things you like to do, things you don't like to do in operating, whether you prefer CW or phone or digital. And then the same is going to hold true for the contest. We're going to operate CQ Worldwide sideband. Vincent, PJ6Y, is taking the lead on setting up the schedule for the contest. It was decided we'll operate multi-2, so we're bringing down filters and multiplexers and going to have adequate antennas to put a good effort forth. So we really try and put as much ownership on the young hams. And after Rotuma, and sort of a takeaway from the International DX Convention in Visalia, is we're doing a series of workshops. So we have 5 experienced DXpeditioners that are participating in 3 Zoom workshops that are going to cover everything A to Z and what it takes to plan and execute a successful DXpedition. So we're not just putting them on the island, they're going to learn what it took to get them there. And therefore, they should be able to take that knowledge and apply it to a future trip that they go on themselves.
So Greg, I'm also curious about the difference between the on-island operator and the person that's going to be operating remote. I've had a lot of people talk to me about, in a multi-op, you just lose some of that dynamic. You lose some of the personality by not being on site. How do you overcome that? And just tell me your ideas about that.
So our approach is when we designed the rib, we engineered it so that it could be dropped off at an unmanned location and operate. And if the radio stops working, the radio will be power cycled. We put some intelligence into it to make it a little bit fault tolerant to the degree we can without having hardware redundancy. So our plan is the on-island team is hands off on the rib. And we have a support team of 4 off-island that'll monitor the health of the systems, that'll be in the chat room with the operators, and will take care of all the scheduling stuff. So the operation is almost independent other than doing some frequency coordination. We have a dashboard for the remote operators to use. They'll know where the local stations are in terms of band, frequency, and mode. And so when they plan their operation, they will avoid what we're doing and vice versa.
And can you give me the list of youth operators who are going to be on this trip?
Yes. Let me pull that up real quick here so I don't butcher their calls.
Not that we don't care about the old guys, but I'm most interested in the young people that are going.
Yes, so are we. So the team consists of the young ops, is Dominic, DL1DJH, Amelia, Y08YL, George, Y09LIG, Matus, OM8ATE, Vincent, PC2Y, Susan, PD2SZN, Aaron, KC1SJR, Ewan, N7EWN, and Marley, who is taking her test a week from Saturday.
That's an impressive international group.
Thank you. We picked a time frame and we had a lot more North American representation, but it turned out that some of the North American contingent realized that there was going to be too much of a conflict between their studies and the expedition. So they had to drop off the team, and we had a number of European ops that stepped up. And again, you want to come along, there's a slot open, it's yours.
So I'm curious with those young people. I know that some at least have done a DXpedition before. What is generally their travel experience?
It varies a lot. This team does not have a lot of travel experience. None of these young hams have been to a foreign country and operated. So this is a new experience for them. The way that we're approaching this is that we're covering all of the expenses for the young hams. And so the first expense we covered was their travel expense, and that was accomplished through a grant from the Northern California DX Foundation. When I applied for the grant, I said first goal is to pay for their plane tickets. The second goal is to cover all of their operating costs, and we're well on our way to doing that. And then once those costs are covered, then we'll contribute towards covering some of the costs of the senior team, or the old men, if you will. And it's been customary in the DXpedition world that a team member pays for half of their way. So the experienced DXpeditioners are paying for their own plane tickets, and they'll cover half of their expenses on island. And hopefully we'll complete our fundraising before we leave, and we'll cover half of their expenses as well.
So let's talk about fundraising, since you brought that up. I know these DXpeditions come with a price, and fundraising is a significant effort that needs to be made. What have you done beyond what you just explained so far, and what needs to be done? How can we help you?
We're still, running as hard as we can to get to our financial goals. The budget for this trip, exclusive of the young operators airfare, is about $28,000. We're going to meet that goal without a doubt, but we still have a ways to go. We generate funds by soliciting donations from clubs and organizations. So I have a list of 110 or so DX-focused clubs that we request support from. We have a database of hams that have contributed in the past, and we reach out to those folks through email and through press releases. I learned something in Rotuma is that when you do a press release, you see a spike within about the next 8 to 12 hours of donations. So it's important to have a cadence of press releases, not overwhelming, not too much in your face, but enough so that we're stimulating people to support us. And those releases generally go out through the Daily DX, DX World, and then through our various social media sites.
So, Greg, I can tell by this conversation that PJ6Y will not be the last DXpedition that you help out with. Do you have anything on the horizon for 26, 27, or am I getting ahead of myself?
No, you're not getting ahead of yourself at all. We definitely have a trip on our calendar for May or June of next year. It's a challenge because most of these young kids are in college. We've got to work around their educational schedule. So maybe late May, maybe June. If we do late May, we can possibly do CQWPX. But I think it's important it layers another experience onto the trip if you can do it and participate in a contest.
Greg, one of the things I was interested to read about was your partnership with Youth on the Air, Yoda. Tell me about that.
Thank you. It's started with a chance meeting at Dayton in 2024. I met Neil Rapp, and we spent some time talking about the vision I had for leveraging the rib technology to bring more young hams into DXpeditioning. And like so many things we do that it feels right, Neil and I talked 3 times over the course of the last year, and this, the synergies are there. The way we operate seems to mesh well. And so out of that meeting, we ended up with a large number of Yoda members on the off-island team for Rotuma. And then some of those members, as we discussed earlier, have advanced to be a part of the on-island team for Saba. I went to the Yoda camp in Denver a couple weeks ago and talked about Saba. And a bunch of young kids, and I asked them to ask me questions, and it was crickets. And so I figured it was time to turn it around, and I asked how many of them wanted to go on a DXpedition, and they all raised their hands, and we're all very excited and animated, so that was really rewarding. We talked about the trip next year. We actually have 10 or 12 operators on the waiting list for that trip, and the majority of those operators are from North America this time around and are members of Yoda. So the partnership is working very well together.
So clearly I need to have Neil on the show because I don't know a lot about Yoda. I think I've interviewed a couple members of Yoda. What more can you tell me about that organization?
It started in Europe as youngsters on the air and evolved to having a North America presence where it became Youth on the Air in North America, and both organizations still exist. They have an annual camp. There are about 30 or 40 in attendance this year in Denver. They also have another camp for younger hams. I think the oldest age in that camp is going to be 12 years old. It'll be a smaller event, and I think it's taking place in Ohio sometime this year. They have these camps annually. They did hot air balloon launches. They have workshops, soldering skills, construction skills. It's really a nice, well-rounded program. And I'm glad to be a part of it and looking forward to continuing the relationship as we move forward.
Greg, before we wrap up, I just want to make sure we haven't missed something. Are there any bullet points you have on your list that we haven't touched upon? Since
we're kind of on the tail end of talking about fundraising, if you are so inclined to support us, you can visit our website at PJ6Y2025.com. And there is a donate button there. If you feel that you would like to help us out, we could certainly use it. Other than that, look forward to working you all on the air. The operator on the other end on Saba is likely going to be experiencing his first DXpedition pileup, and it's going to be very exciting for them. We'll be on the air probably October 15th, maybe early the 16th, and we'll be on the air through October 28th.
Well, Greg, I appreciate you joining me today, and I'm certainly inspired after talking to you. So thank you for all the effort you've put into this trip, but also for taking this time today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. This is a great platform you have. I watch your podcasts weekly, and I'm very impressed with the work that you're doing, Kevin, and keep up the good work.
Well, I appreciate that. My name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. I've been talking to Gregg Marco, W6IZT. You need to look for this DXpedition in the fall, PJ6Y. We're very happy that people like Greg are doing the work he's doing and not just talking about it, but he's actually in it, making a difference. Thanks again, Greg.
Thank you, Kevin. Have a great day.